He insulted me and then hung up, but I had to get back to work and couldn't waste my time worrying about it. When I got home after work, I noticed they had taken their things and left, and I thought that was the end of it. But the most annoying part was yet to come because around midnight, my dad called me and told me that Lisa had something to say to me. She said she was sorry for the way she had spoken to me and retracted everything she had said. She would love to have a second chance to make amends with me and didn't want to be on bad terms with me over something so insignificant. I told her to shut up and leave me alone because I didn't need her fake apologies. I am not stupid and could tell why she suddenly wanted to pretend to be a happy family now that I wasn't going to let them live with me. If she really regretted her actions, she wouldn't have waited so long to realize she had messed up and would have apologized right after that phone call that day, or even during their vacation for whatever it was. I am sure my dad doesn't regret it either, but when he realized I wasn't going to forgive them, he chose to be sentimental with me and told me I was heartless for not letting them live with me. He said he was willing to share all the bills with me if I let him move back in, but he wanted to live in this house because it reminded him of my mother, so it would be really selfish of me to kick them out like this without thinking about the repercussions that could have because he just wanted to come back to feel closer to my mother. Apparently, he even said that Lisa had just had a bad day that day and didn't mean anything she said, and even his daughters missed me, so they wanted me to let them come back and start over here. But I wasn't going to accept any of that. I always knew my dad had his eye on this house since the divorce, and now that he'd seen this side of Lisa, he didn't want to risk anything. So I told him they could come back home because I wasn't going to change my mind. Then, out of nowhere, my dad started crying uncontrollably on the phone and accused me of being the most selfish daughter ever because I couldn't even let him live in the house where he spent the happiest days of his life over a simple disagreement I had with Lisa, and because they hadn't taken me with them on their honeymoon, which wasn't even the main reason. He said I was being petty and cruel and that my mom would hate this ugly side of me. Am I the bad one for not allowing my dad and his new family to move back in with me after his new wife treated me poorly and they didn't ask me to join them on their honeymoon? Update 1. The comments on my original post weren't what I expected. Still, I don't think some of you needed to be so rude about it, but I understand the point everyone was trying to make. As for me, I stuck to my decision and didn't let my dad move back in because honestly, he simply doesn't deserve it. He hasn't been anything but rude to me so far, and I don't need any more of that in my life. It was nice while it lasted because both he and Lisa were very kind to me at first, but once I told my dad that I still needed time to think, they started showing their true colors. Probably they ran out of patience and thought they could bully me into letting them live with me, but unfortunately, I am not that weak. I'd rather be alone than end up spending my time with the wrong people. I shouldn't have let them come here at all because his reaction when he found out the house deed had been transferred to me, and not him, should have been enough for me to realize how materialistic and selfish people can be when it comes to that. As for Lisa, I am glad she chose to senselessly argue with me and ended up ruining things for herself on a large scale because if she hadn't said that, we all would have been a happy family, no war, I guess we could have been. But that's never going to happen because I am not going to fall for their fake behavior again. I was alone, I missed my mom, and all my grandparents had already passed away, so I needed a family that would be my support system, but these people are definitely not up to that job. And I am relieved I realized that before it was too late. It's been a few days since they left, but my dad has been calling me regularly and keeps texting me. Since I am not answering his calls, he thinks I should at least give them one last chance to fix things, but they don't deserve it. They wasted their only chance, and if I give them another one, I am sure they'll waste it too, and that will affect me more than anyone else, so it doesn't make sense to take that risk. I feel bad for treating my dad this way, but here is not much I can do in a situation like this. You reap what you sow, and in his case, he never bothered to make much effort with me, so he has no right to complain when he realizes that I am not going to make life decisions based on him and his feelings. But he never did that for... So he has no right to complain when he realizes that I am not going to make life decisions based on him and his feelings, but he never did that for me. Update 2. Apparently my dad not only insists but is quite desperate to move. Guess why? Because he didn't take a break from his job as he claimed. He was fired a couple of months before his wedding and has been living off his savings until now, which were quite substantial. But now, after an extravagant wedding and a luxurious honeymoon, He finally told Lisa that they couldn't afford to come back and try their luck in San Antonio because he couldn't pay the rent there. Lisa quit her job to be a housewife after meeting my dad, so she couldn't help. Now they needed to find a place here, and my dad just assumed that I would let them live with me. Lisa had no idea about any of this until he told her the truth, which is why she didn't even bother to apologize. So I was right about her not having any real remorse for her behavior. She is as fake as can be, but that's the kind of wife my dad deserves anyway. Today, he contacted me and asked me to let them move in for just a couple of days until he can find a decent job that pays enough for them to afford moving. But I told him I wasn't going to do that. They had been unpleasant to me, and I didn't need that kind of negativity around me. He's an adult. He should have known that if he didn't have a job, then he shouldn't have had such an expensive wedding followed by an equally lavish honeymoon. I understand the need to show off wealth, but that's only for people who can actually afford it, not for men with a housewife and 2 teenage stepdaughters. He was very aware of his responsibilities but chose to ignore them, and that's not my fault. I refuse to feel guilty for putting myself first. They can manage on their own because none of this is my problem anymore. I texted him and said the same things I mentioned here, but I tried to be a bit more polite than here because I didn't want to come off as mocking him or anything like that. But he decided to take it as a mockery of what was happening and told me that I would have to suffer for what I was doing to him. I don't know what to say to that. So I didn't respond because at this point, no matter what I say, he will find a way to make it my fault and blame me for it. So it's better not to say anything and let him wallow in his misery. It's hardly my problem now. Update 3. So my dad decided to leave the city today, but why would he leave without letting me know? How disappointing I am as a daughter. He could have left quietly, but he is who he is, and so is his wife, so they chose to make a whole spectacle out of it. The last time I talked to him was about 3 weeks ago, but we didn't speak again after that, and he didn't bother to contact me either. But today, both he and Lisa texted me, saying they were thrilled to inform me that Lisa's ex-boyfriend had decided to sponsor their trip back home, and was even going to let them stay with him because he suddenly realized that he also needed to see his daughters. Lisa had full custody of her daughters, and her ex paid child support, but he was always a bit too busy to make time for his daughters. He waited long enough for Lisa and my dad to sort out their situation on their own, but when he realized they were useless, he offered to clean up his own mess, which is great for his daughters, I suppose. At least some dads do step up, even if it's too late. They didn't tell me all of this, but I know this could have been the only possible explanation because they posted a picture of their daughters a few hours ago with a lucky clover and a 4-leaf clover sticker as the caption. So I am smart enough to figure out what might be the real story behind Lisa's ex's sudden epiphany and why he's funding their trip back home. I don't understand exactly why he would sponsor all their plane tickets, but I think Lisa's manipulation and stubbornness might have had something to do with it. I know for sure she has that behavior. I've seen it firsthand in the past. I don't know exactly what happened, but I am relieved they're leaving, and this is the last I'll have to see of them. I also realized how easy I had it after reading some stories people shared here about their crazy families. You can be sure my dad is a bit too worried about his reputation to even try to hurt me in any way because he knows I won't hesitate to call the police. I have enough training to know how to defend myself, so T here is no need for me to worry. Now that they're leaving, T here is even less reason for me to think about them, so hooray for me, I guess. I still feel a bit lonely sometimes, but instead of wallowing in it, I now turn to my friends because I think that's a better path forward in situations like this. I completely isolated myself after my mom passed away, and I didn't even realize how lonely I'd become until I read the comments here. It's going to take some time, but I am going to try to make the best of my life now because I have a stable job, earn a decent income, and have my own home, which isn't something a lot of people my age have. And I am very grateful to my mom for that. I have great friends who care about me, and honestly, what more does a person need? If I get into trouble again, I'll just come back here, and I am sure the wonderful people who read it will help me once more. Update 4. Today, I received an unexpected call from my father. Well, not so unexpected because he had been trying to communicate with me through messages, social media, and calls, but I didn't want to talk to him. I finally answered because I was curious about why he was so insistent, and also because I wanted him to stop bothering me. It had been several months since we last talked, so I knew this was going to be interesting, to say the least. I was surprised to hear his voice after so long, but my surprise turned to disbelief when he told me that Lisa had decided to get back with her ex, the same one who financed their trip back home. Apparently, things didn't work out as she expected with my father, and she decided to resume her previous relationship. My father was in a state of shock and sadness. He seemed genuinely sorry for everything that had happened and asked for a chance to reconcile and rebuild our relationship. However, after everything that had happened, I couldn't help but feel indifferent. I had gone through too much stress and pain because of his and Lisa's behavior, and I no longer had the desire to let them back into my life. I told him I was sorry, but I had already made my decision, and I had no intention of changing it. Even though I could hear the desperation in his voice, I stood firm in my position. After all, I couldn't ignore all the pain they had caused me. Since then, my father has continued trying to contact me, but I've chosen to block his calls and messages. I know it may be difficult for him, but I have to prioritize my own peace of mind and well-being. That's all for now.